It's nothing that personal. It's just watching the way he's treated other people in the organization, people on the field, not showing up for the team photo, just quotes, just belittling people, blowing them off. And it's just year after year of that. It's really remarkable how cruel and mean-spirited he can be. And of course, there's another side to him that his friends see. It's a warm and pleasant side and very good-hearted, and I acknowledge that. But there's just too much water under the bridge at the ballpark and from what he's done, mostly to people within the organization.
Because Barry has this reputation as being a jerk, as being difficult with the media, which he is and he is, but that really doesn't color my view of his accomplishments and this whole other steroids issue. And I mean, they are kind of two separate issues. Sure, they intersect at times.
The problem that I had with the media were the guys who never even knew him. They were simply writing their articles, their editorials, based on something that they heard. That's something that they read. And when they started layering on this incredible blanket of abuse, that was wrong.
And when I asked Bud Selig about the possibility of asterisks for steroid-era sluggers, he expressed little enthusiasm for the idea. So I guess we're left with the numbers. Numbers that have always meant more in baseball than any other sport. But in this case, we might do well to consider a line that's been attributed to Mark Twain. There are three kinds of lies: lies, damn lies, and statistics. Baseball's record book already tells a lie at the expense of Roger Maris. Soon it will tell another at the expense of Henry Aaron, an authentically great ball player, an authentic civil rights hero, and for many of us, still, the authentic home run king.
But here's the deal, Ken, and I think what's going to make Giants fans not go to Giants games this year isn't the fact that the Mitchell report came out, it's that Barry Bonds isn't in the lineup. And that, I think, explains it all. Fans like it. They made $6.1 billion in baseball last year. That's a lot of revenue. And everybody turned the other cheek.
Rick was right. We loved it. Yeah, we did love it. All right, thanks, Dennis.
The fans love it.
This guy over here, Charles Gibson, is a big baseball fan, but he's the anchorman on ABC Evening News, so I mean, he's there to tell you, in Iraq today, 14 deaths as a suicide bomber, and that's his job. That's not my job. My job is like, here we are at AT&T Park. Barry Bonds just needs one more home run to break the all-time record. Meanwhile, the Balco prosecutor said today that Barry is going to be brought up on charges, and it's like, wait a minute, where's Charles Gibson? Get him in here for that story. Meanwhile, there's a story about Barry that was off the field today. Here's Charles Gibson at the World News Tonight desk. Charles, what do you got?
I mean, you're playing a game, you're getting all this attention, and the guys, who are able to just kind of get it and embrace it and give it back to the media and therefore to the fans and kind of, they're the most fun to cover, for sure. So, I mean, I don't really care whether Barry did or not, but sure, it would have been more fun along the way.
I remember one night in Atlanta after a playoff game in 2002, he'd done something that everybody needed to talk to him about. And it was getting late, and I had, just as it happened, my column was basically written. I just needed to plug in a couple quotes, so I wasn't sweating bullets, but a lot of people were. And so now they're all crowded around his locker. He's got this back to him, and wait till I get dressed. So he meticulously dresses, and the shirt is just right. He's got his back to the people for about 15 just horrifying minutes if you're on deadline. Your life's passing in front of your eyes. Finally turns around and says, I got nothing to say. And that was just so cruel and mean-spirited. Unbelievable that somebody would do that. And that's exactly the way he wanted it to happen. He couldn't have been more delighted with the way that all happened.
But Ted Williams apparently is the same sort of guy. Prickly personality, not nice to the media at all. Spectacular performer on the field. But and this will be interesting too, in his later years, Williams kind of mellowed and wanted to be embraced. But there were still a lot of writers who weren't buying that. And I imagine the same thing will happen here.
Ted Williams is a great example, who was a real pain in the rear in a lot of ways. A tremendous baseball player. Most of the coverage of Ted Williams, ignored Ted Williams, the human being, and focused on Ted Williams, the outfielder and the hitter. And do I wish we lived in that world? Sometimes I do. We don't. And so the reality of today's world is it's all part of the same story.
I think to a great degree, Bonds has received a free pass from the media in this market. Television, free pass. Flagship station, free pass. The writers, much more than the broadcast media, have done a better job covering him. I mean, there's certain columnists that have been tremendous. Ann Killian of the Mercury News, for example.
I sat down with him when he first came to the Giants. I sat down with him for a pretty long time. You know, when this was post-Pittsburgh, he was kind of trying to remake his image. And I had a long conversation with him, and our children were right about the same ages, boy and a girl. And, you know, so there was, I wouldn't say bonding, but a little tiny bit of, you know, discussion of things other than baseball, you know, briefly for a moment there. And then, you know, that was early on in his Giants career before he became king of the world.
If you're a commentator working for somebody in a business deal with a sport, I'm sure it affects the way you do your business. Do I fault broadcasters doing that? It's their business. It's the part of the business package, you know. I'm sure a lot of them would prefer it weren't, but that's the way it is.
I will say this, that I was totally immersed in it. I was totally into it. He's the best player I've ever seen. Best swing I've ever seen. The combination of power and the ability to hit for average, unparalleled. And you know, the 15-year ride we had watching him put together this career was remarkable. And to me, there was no distraction.
Bonds hits one high, hits it deep to center, out of here, 750. The wait is over, and they are on their feet here at AT&T Park.
Now, in the case of Krukow and Kuiper, I think it's very interesting because, you know, as rah-rah as they are behind Bonds, it's completely genuine because of the appreciation of him as a ball player, which is kind of what I relate to. You know, this is something that we've very rarely seen. You can talk about any great player, that he's right on that level, and when they see that, all else is forgotten.
They're working for the network that has a vested interest in Barry Bonds being on the network and giving them good ratings, all right? That's not their, you know, they didn't cut that deal. They cut the deal to do the work they do. And, you know, I personally believe actually that those guys were honest. Some of the things they said in terms of, I mean, I think Mike Krukow really has more of a affection for Barry Bonds than other broadcasters did. I think that part was honest, you know.
Because I am a Giants broadcaster, and because I've been in this town for a long time, and because I've known Barry Bonds a long time, and because I consider him a friend, this part was never at 1 second a job. This was, for me, it was a privilege.
Here's the payoff. A floater to Bonds, and he hits it high. He hits it deep, and it is out here.
And then you overlay that with this personality problem that a lot of people would perceive about Bonds, and I think you have a recipe for questions being raised about why did you say that about him? Why didn't you say that about him? I know plenty of people on the air and in print who have been accused of being, you know, water carriers for Bonds, of not telling the whole story because they wanted to maintain some kind of relationship with Bonds.
Somebody from Fox Sports Net Bay Area told me there was a dramatic difference in the ratings the nights Bonds played versus when he didn't play. That the ratings would drop a significant amount, something like 30%, 30, 40%. If people would apparently people would turn on and see, is Barry playing? Boom, click. If he was, oh, I'll watch.
There's a high drive deep into right center field to the big part of the ballpark. Number 71, and what a shot over the 421-foot marker. The deepest part of any ballpark in the National League. And Barry Bonds is now the home run king, number 71, and it was impressive.
we trust what Ralph and Tom do, and I want their opinions. And it's what Ralph thinks is what makes Ralph go. I don't want to dictate to Ralph, you must like Barry, you must talk positive of Barry, you must not like Barry, you have to talk negative of him. It's what Ralph thinks is what makes Ralph himself, it's what makes Tom himself, Gary, all the other talk show hosts, and that's what drives KNBR. It's their opinions. If you try and force an opinion on somebody, you can tell right away that it's not legitimate, and so we don't do that.
I don't feel like I need to say it every single time I talk about Barry Bonds, but if somebody were to ask me, do I think he took steroids? Do I think he took HGH? Do I think he took performance-enhancing drugs? Yeah. I mean, I think I'm relatively intelligent, and I put all the pieces together.
It's fair for a columnist. It's fair for them to know how I feel. Maybe not the beat writer, the writer who's writing the game story or covering the team every day. But my job is to write my opinion, and my opinion is shaped by my interactions with people, by my opinion about their steroid use or their alleged steroid use, my opinion about how they deal with their position of fame and how they deal with the accolades and the money that comes their way, how they treat it. I mean, I'm a columnist.
Well, I mean, I don't think this station was going to sink or swim on the merits of any player, even Bonds, but he certainly gave us all kinds of great stuff to talk about. I mean, he was responsible for most of the conversation for many, many years, even before the steroid thing, because of the nature of his personality. So certainly Barry Bonds is the stuff that sports talk show hosts dream about.